We're going to talk about the new album from the Prodigy, No Tourists. The Prodigy are one of the most important musical acts to come from Great Britain in the last 30 years. Since their 1992 debut album Experience, they've pushed rave culture and electronic music in so many different directions it's hard to really discuss. Liam Howlett is the creative force behind the three-piece band from Essex. In the 1990s, the Prodigy were really at the forefront of rave culture and electronic music, and they really captured the mainstream attention with their 1997 album, The Fat of the Land. The Fat of the Land produced #1 singles like Breathe, the iconic Firestarter, and of course, Smack My Bitch Up, which peaked at number 8. Since their 1990s heyday, the Prodigy have still been putting out some really exciting, aggressive music throughout the 2000s and are currently on a 5-album #1 streak on the UK album chart. We last heard from the Prodigy with 2015's The Day Is My Enemy. Since this album's release, the band plan to simplify their creative process and no longer want to put out full-length albums, preferring to send out EPs instead, which they can produce quicker, and they feel like this helps them connect with their fan base more. Their new album, No Tourists, is 10 tracks long, clocks in at just under 40 minutes. Liam Howlett is the primary songwriter on this album. Howlett has sole writing credit on all but 2 tracks on this album, and this is the first album from the Prodigy that Howlett has primarily acted as songwriter since 2004's Always Outnumbered, Never Outgunned. Coming into this 7th album, the Prodigy know who they are by this point and stick to the formula that has worked so successfully for the band in the past. The instrumentals and the overall vibe of this project feel really fresh. It's really striking to hear such energy from the Prodigy, considering that they've been going since 1992. At this point in their careers, they could afford to relax and just churn out a generic album and their fan base will still buy it and it'll probably still go to #1 in the charts. But Howlett's songwriting and structuring really keeps the formula fresh and reinvents it for 2018. Tracks like Champions of London sound exactly like you'd expect a Prodigy song to sound. They've got the classic stabby synths that punctuate the instrumental here. The vocals are very in your face, the drums are really frenetic, and this is supported by a harsh, raw guitar riff. And the vocals just repeat Champions of London, Champions of London. These instrumental elements are fused together to create a really dystopic vision of London, with the Prodigy just chanting that they're Champions of London. Champions of London is full of passion and is one of the highlights on this album. I like each instrumental on No Tourists. Time Bomb Zone is another track that builds on this classic formula from the Prodigy. I feel like there's a bit of a dubstep influence on this track. Other tracks as well have got elements that have come from more modern electronic and dance music. There are certainly echoes of early Pendulum on a few of these tracks. Time Bomb Zone has got really searing and aggressive instrumental with some really snappy, fast-paced drums. The instrumental is built around a high-pitched female vocal that's been sped up. I love the synth loop that just circles in and out of the instrumental here. Time Bomb Zone again has just got great energy. The highlight of No Tourists is Fight Fire with Fire. This track features industrial hip-hop duo Horrors. Horrors are very Death Grips inspired, punky hip-hop. Horror style matches perfectly with the Prodigy here. Fight Fire with Fire is more mid-tempo than a lot of the tracks on this album. This track is so interesting to me because we've heard hip-hop go in a more punky direction aesthetically recently, and groups like Horrors are really taking this ethos and they're directly plugging this punk influence straight into their sound. And so the vocals are just really harsh, and these vocals mesh so well with the guitar lead on this instrumental. Fight Fire with Fire is just a banger on this album. I feel like this is the best hip-hop collaboration we've heard from the Prodigy, and their style just suits perfectly with an industrial hip-hop act like Horrors. We Live Forever is another notable track on No Tourists. We Live Forever feels the most influenced by earlier Prodigy hits. There are shades of Out of Space in terms of the drums here. Meanwhile, the vocals and the effects on these vocals sound like they've come straight from Out of Space. And while it doesn't feel super original, this song is still really enjoyable. I really like the drum pattern that they've got here. And the drums and these whistling synths definitely remind me a bit of Hot Ride. And while some of these ideas might feel a bit derivative of earlier Prodigy work, We Live Forever is still a really gripping track. It comes 3 songs into the album and raises the energy even higher than it already was at this point. This song feels like it could work as a single, even though it's not the most original track on No Tourists. There are strong industrial moments throughout this album, and No Tourists does work hard to maintain this raw feeling that the Prodigy have developed and turned into their signature sound. And the Prodigy are one of the most influential British bands around, so it's exciting to hear them maintain their level of consistency, even if some of these ideas don't feel as fresh as they would have done, say, in 1992. Regardless, No Tourists is still a really exciting album. There's so much energy, you can just put this on and just give you that feeling of just energy and aggression. And No Tourists is certainly an exciting album. The Prodigy stick within the parameters of the style that they've defined over the last 20 plus years of their career, despite some questions over how original it is within the band's discography. The energy is high throughout this project. There's so much aggression and anger still directed through their music, but there's enough fresh instrumentals and ideas to make this a compelling listen in 2018. The Prodigy No Tourists for me is 7 out of 10.